The china plate shattered against the marble floor, sending fragments skittering across the kitchen like frozen tears. Sarah stood there, trembling, one hand clutching her abdomen where the surgical incisions still burned beneath her clothes, the other gripping the counter for support. The pain was blinding, but it was nothing compared to the rage coursing through her veins. What the hell was that? Marcus's voice thundered from the dining room where his entire family sat waiting, forks poised, faces pinched with impatience. I dropped it, Sarah said through gritted teeth, her voice barely audible over the roaring in her ears. She'd been out of surgery for exactly 4 days. 4 days since they'd removed the cysts that had been growing on her ovaries, 4 days since the doctor had looked her in the eyes and said with absolute clarity, complete bed rest for 2 weeks, no lifting anything heavier than a coffee cup, no strenuous activity whatsoever. 4 days since Marcus had nodded sympathetically in that hospital room, squeezed her hand, and promised he'd take care of everything. That promise had lasted approximately 48 hours. Marcus appeared in the doorway now, his face flushed red, that vein in his temple throbbing the way it always did when she embarrassed him in front of his family. My mother has been waiting for her dinner for 20 minutes, Sarah. 20 minutes. You know she has her schedule. I just had surgery, Sarah whispered, hating how small her voice sounded, hating the tears that threatened to spill. The doctor said you'd be fine, Marcus interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. My mom had her appendix out and was back to normal in 2 days. You're just being dramatic. It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake. My whole family is here. Did you really think I was going to tell them we couldn't host because you're having a little discomfort? A little discomfort. Sarah's vision blurred. The incisions across her abdomen felt like they were on fire, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through her core. She'd taken only half the prescribed pain medication because Marcus had made that comment about her being loopy and how she needed to be present for his family. She'd pushed through preparing a turkey, peeling 20 pounds of potatoes, making his mother's special stuffing recipe from scratch because God forbid they use the boxed kind. Just get it together and bring out the food, Marcus said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that meant she was really testing his patience now. And smile. I don't want them thinking something's wrong. He disappeared back into the dining room, and Sarah heard his voice shift immediately to that jovial tone he used with his family. She'll be right out. You know how she is, such a perfectionist about presentation. Sarah looked down at the broken china, at the turkey that needed carving, at the mountain of dishes still waiting to be served. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She could feel something wet and warm seeping through the bandages under her clothes, and a cold finger of fear traced down her spine. Was she bleeding? Had she torn something? Through the doorway, she could see them all gathered around her dining room table. Marcus's mother, Diane, sitting at the head like a queen holding court, her lips pursed in that perpetual expression of disapproval. Marcus's sister Jennifer, scrolling through her phone with barely concealed boredom. Jennifer's husband Todd, already 3 beers deep and getting louder by the minute. Marcus's brother Kyle and his wife Amanda, who at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. Is she actually going to feed us, or what? Diane's voice carried clearly into the kitchen. I don't know why Marcus puts up with this. My mother taught me that a woman's job is to take care of her family, surgery or no surgery. When I had Jennifer, I was back in the kitchen the next day. That was different, Mom, Jennifer said without looking up from her phone. That was just childbirth. Sarah probably just had a little procedure. I saw on her Instagram she was posting selfies yesterday. Sarah's jaw clenched. Those selfies had been taken before the surgery, scheduled posts she'd set up weeks ago because Marcus had insisted she maintain her online presence for his business networking. But of course, they didn't know that. And of course, they wouldn't believe her if she tried to explain. She bent down to pick up the broken china, and white-hot pain exploded across her abdomen. Sarah gasped, nearly collapsing, catching herself on the counter at the last second. The room spun. For a moment, she genuinely thought she might pass out right there on her kitchen floor, surrounded by broken dishes and the ruins of a Christmas dinner she'd been forced to cook. Sarah. Marcus's hiss came from the doorway again. What are you doing down there? Get up. They can't hear you. Something inside Sarah cracked then, something that had been bending and bending for years, something that finally just broke. She straightened slowly, leaving the shattered china on the floor, and turned to face her husband. I can't do this, she said. What? I said I can't do this, Marcus. I'm going upstairs. I'm going to bed. You can serve your family yourself. His face went from red to purple. The hell you are. You get back here right now and finish what you started. I didn't slave away at work all year, so you could embarrass me in front of my family on Christmas Eve. Slave away. The words came out sharper than Sarah intended, but she found she didn't care anymore. The pain in her abdomen, the exhaustion, the sheer injustice of it all had pushed her past the point of caring. You sit in an office and attend meetings while I manage your entire household. I do your laundry, I clean your house, I coordinate your social calendar, I smile and nod when your mother insults me. And now, for days after major surgery, you have me cooking a feast for 10 people because you were too lazy and too cheap to just cater the damn meal. Lower your voice, Marcus growled, taking a step toward her. They can hear you. Good, Sarah said, and she was surprised to find she meant it. Maybe they should hear me. Maybe they should know that you told me this morning that if I didn't have dinner ready, you consider it failure to fulfill my duties as a wife. Your exact words, Marcus. I wrote them down. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You're being hysterical. This is exactly the kind of dramatic nonsense I'm talking about. It's just one dinner. One night. And you're acting like I asked you to climb Mount Everest. I had surgery 4 days ago. Sarah's voice cracked, and she hated herself for it, hated the tears that were falling now. The doctor said I could rupture my incisions. I could develop an infection. I could cause permanent damage. But you don't care about any of that, do you? You care about what your mother thinks. You care about looking like the perfect husband with a perfect wife who does everything you say. This is what marriage is, Marcus said coldly. Partnership. Sacrifice. Doing things for each other. Or does that only go one way? Because I work 60 hours a week to pay for this house, to pay for your little hobbies, to give you the lifestyle you want. My hobbies. Sarah laughed, and it was a broken, bitter sound. You mean the part-time job I'm not allowed to take because you say it makes you look bad? The friends I don't see anymore because you always have something you need me to do? The family I barely talk to because you convinced me they were toxic. Everything okay in here? Kyle's voice came from behind Marcus, his brow furrowed with concern. We heard shouting. Marcus's expression transformed in an instant, that public face sliding into place like a mask. Everything's fine. Sarah's just a little overwhelmed. You know how emotional women get after medical procedures. The hormones and all that. He laughed, that practiced laugh that made Sarah's skin crawl. Kyle didn't laugh. His eyes moved between them, and Sarah saw something there. Recognition, maybe, or at least suspicion. Sarah, are you all right? The question, asked with genuine concern, almost broke her completely. When was the last time someone had asked her that? Really asked, wanting to know the answer? Sarah started, but Marcus cut her off. She's fine. Just being dramatic as usual. We'll be out in a minute. His tone was final, dismissive, and he actually moved to physically block Kyle's view of her. Actually, I'm not fine, Sarah heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange, distant. I'm not fine at all. I had surgery 4 days ago, and my husband has had me on my feet cooking for 10 hours. I think I might be bleeding through my bandages. I'm in so much pain I can barely stand. And when I asked for help, he told me I was being dramatic. The silence that followed was deafening. Through the doorway, Sarah could see the rest of the family had gone quiet. All pretense of conversation dropped. They'd heard everything. Marcus's face was a mask of barely contained fury. Go upstairs, he said quietly. We'll talk about this later. No, Sarah said, surprising herself. No, I don't think we will. I think I'm done talking. Sarah. I'm going upstairs, she said, cutting him off for the first time in their 5-year marriage. I'm going to check my incisions and probably call my doctor. And tomorrow, After you've figured out how to serve your own damn Christmas dinner, I'm calling a lawyer. She pushed past Marcus, past Kyle, and walked into the dining room. Every pair of eyes was on her, but she kept her gaze straight ahead. Diane's mouth was hanging open in shock. Jennifer had actually put down her phone. Todd was frozen mid-beer sip. "Merry Christmas," Sarah said to the room at large. "There's a turkey in the kitchen. Help yourselves." She made it to the stairs before her legs started to give out, clutched the banister with both hands, and hauled herself up one step at a time. Behind her, she could hear Marcus's voice, loud and blustering, already spinning the narrative. "She's just emotional from the medication. You know how these pain pills make people act. I'll go talk to her, sort this all out." But Sarah was done listening. She made it to the bedroom, locked the door behind her, and collapsed onto the bed. Her hands were still shaking as she pulled out her phone and opened her text messages. There was one from her best friend Rachel, the one Marcus always said was a bad influence. "Rachel, hey babe. Merry Christmas Eve. How are you feeling? Did Marcus actually let you rest like the doctor said?" Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then typed with trembling fingers. "Sarah, can I call you? I need help." The response was immediate. "Rachel, always. Calling now." When Rachel's face appeared on the video call, Sarah finally let herself cry. Really cry, the kind of bone-deep sobs that shook her whole body and sent fresh waves of pain through her abdomen. And Rachel, beautiful, loyal Rachel who had been her friend since college, who had stood up at her wedding even though she'd privately told Sarah she thought Marcus was controlling, Rachel just stayed on the line and let her cry. "Tell me everything," Rachel said when Sarah's sobs had subsided to hiccups. "And I mean everything." So Sarah did. She told her about the surgery, about Marcus's dismissiveness, about being forced to cook despite doctor's orders. She told her about the years of slowly being isolated, of having her confidence chipped away, of being made to feel like she was crazy for wanting basic respect and consideration. The words poured out like a flood, years of suppressed feelings and swallowed complaints finally breaking free. "I'm coming to get you," Rachel said when Sarah finished. "Right now. Pack a bag." "It's Christmas Eve," Sarah protested weakly. "And it's a 3-hour drive." "I don't care if it's the second coming," Rachel said firmly. "You just had surgery, you're potentially bleeding through your bandages, and your husband forced you to cook for his ungrateful family. Pack a bag. I'm leaving now." "Rachel." "Sarah Elizabeth Chun, we have been friends for 15 years. I have watched you disappear into this marriage piece by piece. I have bitten my tongue while that man systematically destroyed your confidence and isolated you from everyone who loves you. I am not letting you spend another night in that house. Pack the bag." Sarah found herself nodding, found herself pulling out a suitcase from the closet with shaking hands. She threw in clothes without really looking at them, grabbed her medications, her laptop, her phone charger. Important documents from the file cabinet. Marcus didn't know she'd kept copies of bank statements, tax returns, deed to the house that was in both their names. Downstairs, she could hear the dinner proceeding without her, hear the clink of silverware and the rise and fall of conversation. Marcus's voice rose above the others occasionally, probably still explaining away her dramatic behavior. As Sarah zipped up her suitcase, she caught sight of herself in the full-length mirror. She looked like a ghost, pale and hollow-eyed, wearing a Christmas sweater that was now spotted with blood seeping through the bandages. When had she become this person? When had she started accepting being treated like an appliance, something to be used and discarded? Her phone buzzed. "Rachel, I'm on the road. 2 hours and 45 minutes. Can you hang on until then?" "Sarah, yes. Thank you." "Rachel, that's what best friends are for." "And Sarah, I'm proud of you. I know that was hard." Sarah set down the phone and sat on the edge of the bed, one hand pressed gingerly to her abdomen. She could feel the wetness of blood through her sweater, knew she should probably change the bandages, knew she should probably go to the emergency room. Instead, she just sat there, letting the sounds of Christmas Eve drift up from below, and waited for rescue. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, Someone was pounding on the bedroom door. Sarah jerked awake, crying out as the movement sent pain lancing through her middle. "Sarah, open this door right now." Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "You've embarrassed me enough for one night. My family is asking questions. My mother is upset. You need to come down there and apologize." "No," Sarah said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "What did you say to me?" "I said no, Marcus. I'm not apologizing for being in pain. I'm not apologizing for not being able to cook a meal 4 days after surgery. And I'm especially not apologizing for telling the truth about how you've been treating me." The door handle rattled.
"Open this door." "No."
There was a long silence, and then Marcus's voice came again, but different this time. Softer, pleading, the voice he used when he wanted something from her. "Baby, come on. I know you're in pain. I know I've been pushing you too hard. But you have to understand, my family only comes once a year. My mother was so looking forward to this. Can't you just come down for an hour? Have some dessert, open presents? Then you can come right back up and rest. I promise." Sarah closed her eyes. This was the part where she usually caved, wasn't it? This was where the guilt would set in, where she'd start doubting herself, wondering if maybe she was being unreasonable. Maybe she should have just pushed through. Maybe she was being selfish. Maybe.
"No."
No more maybes. "Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Sarah said. "I am not coming downstairs. I am leaving. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce." "You're not serious." His voice had gone cold again. "You're just trying to get attention. This is typical Sarah behavior. Drama, tears, threats. You do this every time you don't get your way." "When was the last time I got my way, Marcus?" Sarah asked. "Name one time in the last year that I asked for something, and you said yes without making me feel guilty about it." Silence. "That's what I thought," Sarah said. "I'm done, Marcus. I'm done being dismissed and belittled and treated like hired help. I'm done having my pain minimized and my needs ignored. I'm done with all of it. You ungrateful." Marcus caught himself, but Sarah could hear the rage simmering beneath. "I gave you everything. This house, this life, everything you have is because of me. And this is how you repay me? By throwing a tantrum on Christmas Eve?" "You didn't give me anything," Sarah said quietly. "I earned it. I earned it by giving up my career, my friends, my identity. I earned it by becoming whoever you needed me to be at any given moment. But I'm done earning your approval, Marcus. I'm done." The doorknob rattled again, more violently this time. "Open this goddamn door, Sarah, or I swear to God." "Or what?" Sarah's voice was steady now, clear. "You'll break it down in front of your family? Show them exactly what kind of man you really are? Go ahead, Marcus. Show them." Another long silence. Then footsteps retreating down the hall. Sarah heard him descending the stairs, heard his voice booming out some excuse about how she was heavily medicated and not in her right mind, how she'd feel terrible about all this in the morning. But Sarah knew she wouldn't feel terrible. For the first time in 5 years, she felt clear-headed. Afraid, yes. Uncertain about the future, absolutely. But not terrible. Never terrible again. She changed her bandages with shaking hands, noting with concern the amount of blood that had seeped through. Definitely going to need to see a doctor soon. She sent Rachel a text. Might need to stop at an ER on the way to your place. Rachel. Already planned on it.
Hang tai.
The next 2 hours crawled by. Sarah packed a few more things, gathered important documents, sent emails to her doctor and her family explaining she was safe but needed space. She could hear the party continuing below, could hear the fake laughter and forced cheer. At one point, she heard Diane's shrill voice. "I told him she wasn't good enough for him. Too weak. Too sensitive. My Marcus deserves better." Sarah wondered if Marcus defended her. Somehow, she doubted it. At 10:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Rachel, I'm outside. Can you make it down? Or do I need to come get you?" Sarah took a deep breath, grabbed her suitcase, and unlocked the bedroom door. The house had gone quiet now, the family presumably watching a movie in the living room, their traditional Christmas Eve activity. Sarah could see the flickering light of the TV reflecting off the hallway walls. She made it down the stairs one step at a time, each movement a study in pain management.
At the bottom, she paused.
She could turn right, walk into that living room, let herself be guilted into staying. It would be so easy, so familiar. Instead, she turned left toward the front door. Where do you think you're going? Marcus's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him standing in the hallway, arms crossed, face hard. I told you. I'm leaving. No, you're not. He moved to block her path to the door. You're not going anywhere. You're my wife. Not for long. Sarah, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave on Christmas Eve. Think about how this looks. I don't care how it looks, Sarah said, and realized she truly meant it. I care about how it feels. And this feels like the first good decision I've made in 5 years. You walk out that door, and you're making a huge mistake, Marcus said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet again. You'll lose everything. The house, the money, everything. I'll make sure of it. And everyone will know it was your fault. Everyone will know you abandoned your marriage over nothing. Nothing. Sarah's laugh was bitter. You forced me to cook a Christmas dinner 4 days after surgery, Marcus. You dismissed my pain, ignored my doctor's orders, and treated me like your servant instead of your partner. That's not nothing. That's everything. You're overreacting. That's what you do. You overreact and make mountains out of molehills. Then you should be happy to be rid of me, Sarah said. She pushed past him, gasping as the movement jolted her incisions, and reached for the front door. Marcus grabbed her arm, not hard enough to hurt but firm enough to stop her. Don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. Sarah looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Let me go, Marcus. Not until you calm down and we talk about this rationally.
Let me
go. They stood there for a long moment, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Marcus's head whipped toward the door, confusion crossing his face. Who the hell is that at this hour? Sarah pulled her arm free and opened the door. Rachel stood there, and she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Rachel's brother Tom, who happened to be a police officer, still in uniform from his holiday shift. Sarah, Tom said gently. Rachel called me. Are you all right? Marcus's face went white. Now hold on. This is a private matter. Family business. Sarah? Tom asked again, ignoring Marcus completely. Do you need assistance? I just need to leave, Sarah said, her voice breaking. And he won't let me. The hell I won't, Marcus blustered. She's my wife. She's not in her right mind. The pain medications. Sir, is your wife free to leave if she chooses? Tom's voice was professional, neutral, but there was steel underneath. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Behind him, his family had emerged from the living room, drawn by the commotion. Diane's face was a mask of horror. Jennifer was filming on her phone. Kyle looked deeply uncomfortable. Yes, Marcus finally said. Of course, she's free to leave. I never said she couldn't. She's just not thinking clearly. Then we'll be going, Rachel said, moving past Tom to take Sarah's other arm. Sarah, where's your bag? Right here. Sarah's voice was small but steady. They helped her down the front steps, Rachel on one side, Tom on the other. Behind them, Sarah heard Diane's voice, shrill and accusing. Marcus, what on earth is going on?
Who are these people?
Why is she leaving on Christmas Eve? But Sarah didn't turn around. She kept her eyes forward, focused on Rachel's car waiting at the curb, its engine running, exhaust visible in the cold December air. They helped her into the passenger seat, and Rachel buckled her in like she was precious cargo.
The ER?
Rachel asked. The ER, Sarah confirmed. Tom followed them in his patrol car, and Sarah supposed that made sense. Rachel had probably told him everything, and he was making sure they were safe. As they pulled away from the house, Sarah finally looked back. Marcus stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of Christmas lights, his family clustered behind him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. For 5 years, he had been the center of Sarah's universe, the sun she'd orbited around, adjusting her trajectory to keep him happy. Now he was just a man standing in a doorway, watching his wife drive away on Christmas Eve. "You okay?" Rachel asked softly. "No," Sarah said honestly. "But I will be." The emergency room was surprisingly quiet for Christmas Eve. Or maybe not so surprising. Most people were probably home with their families, drinking eggnog and opening presents. The triage nurse took one look at Sarah's bloodstained sweater and ushered her right back. "Surgical site?" The nurse asked, professional but kind. "4 days ago. Laparoscopic ovarian cyst removal." The nurse's eyebrows rose. "And you've been doing what exactly since then?" "Cooking Christmas dinner for 10 people," Sarah said, and watched the nurse's expression shift from professional concern to barely suppressed outrage. "Sweetheart, you should have been flat on your back. Who told you it was okay to be on your feet like that?" "My husband," Sarah said. Then, after a pause, "My soon-to-be ex-husband." The nurse's expression softened. "Been there. The ex-husband part, not the surgery part. You're gonna be okay. Let's get you checked out." The doctor who examined her was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. "You've got some minor tearing on one of your incision sites," she said after a thorough examination. "Nothing catastrophic, but definitely something that could have been much worse if you'd kept pushing yourself. I'm going to restitch this one and put you on antibiotics as a precaution." "How long until I'm healed?" Sarah asked. "From the original surgery or the new damage?" The doctor's voice was dry. "Because your original recovery timeline just got extended. You need at least another 10 days of complete rest. And I mean complete. No cooking, no cleaning, no lifting anything heavier than a coffee cup. Your body just underwent trauma, and then you put it through more trauma. It needs time to heal." "I understand," Sarah said. The doctor paused in her work, meeting Sarah's eyes. "I'm mandated to ask this. Are you safe? The circumstances you described to the nurse, is your husband a danger to you?" Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. "Not physically," she finally said. "He's never hit me. But there are other kinds of danger," the doctor finished. "Other kinds of abuse." The word hung in the air between them. Abuse. Sarah had never used that word before, never let herself think it. Marcus didn't hit her. He didn't scream at her. He just diminished her. Slowly, methodically, over 5 years, he'd made her smaller and smaller until she'd almost disappeared entirely. "Yes," Sarah whispered. "Yes, there are other kinds." The doctor squeezed her shoulder. "You did the right thing leaving. I've been an ER doctor for 28 years. I've seen too many women wait until it's too late. You're one of the smart ones." After the stitches and the antibiotics and the stern lecture about rest, Rachel drove Sarah back to her apartment. It was a tiny one-bedroom in a neighborhood Sarah had always secretly loved, but Marcus had always called too urban. Rachel had decorated it with twinkling lights and a small tree, and there was a wrapped present under it with Sarah's name on it. "You didn't have to," Sarah said, tears springing to her eyes again. "Of course I did. It's Christmas. Besides, I knew you'd probably end up here eventually. Marcus is an ass, and you're the strongest person I know. I've been waiting for you to figure that out for 5 years." They stayed up until 3 in the morning, talking and crying and making plans. Rachel helped Sarah into the guest bed, which Rachel had already made up with fresh sheets and extra pillows to prop up Sarah's incisions. "Thank you," Sarah whispered as Rachel turned out the light. "For everything." "That's what best friends do," Rachel said simply. "Now rest. Tomorrow we start the next chapter." But Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay there in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Rachel's apartment, and thought about everything that had happened. Her phone had been buzzing all night, texts and calls from Marcus that she'd been ignoring. Finally, around 4 a.m., curiosity got the better of her. She opened her messages. The first dozen were from Marcus, progressing from angry to pleading to threatening. She deleted those without reading them fully. But there was one from Kyle that made her pause.
"Kyle, Sarah, I'm sorry."
"I knew something was wrong. We all did, but we didn't know how bad. Marcus told us you were just dramatic, that you exaggerated everything. Amanda and I are staying at a hotel tonight. We can't be around him right now. I hope you're okay. You deserve so much better than how he treated you. Sarah read it 3 times, then wrote back. Thank you for believing me. That means more than you know. There was another message, this one from a number she didn't recognize. This is Amanda, Kyle's wife. Kyle showed me your text. I want you to know that I saw how hard you worked tonight, how much pain you were in. When you left, Jennifer admitted she saw blood on your sweater and didn't say anything because she thought you were faking for attention. I told her she's part of the problem. I'm so sorry we didn't help you. We should have stood up to Marcus years ago. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, some knot of guilt and shame she hadn't even known she was carrying. She'd been so afraid that they would all side with Marcus, that they would see her as the problem. But at least 2 of them had seen the truth. She finally fell asleep as the sun was rising on Christmas morning, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. When she woke, it was nearly noon, and the smell of coffee and bacon was wafting from the kitchen. Sarah made her way slowly out of bed, moving carefully to protect her newly restitched incision, and found Rachel and Tom at the small dining table, a spread of breakfast foods laid out. "Merry Christmas," Rachel said, smiling. Tom brought donuts. "I made coffee. And before you start, yes, you're allowed to sit and do nothing. That's the whole point." They spent Christmas Day watching movies and eating junk food. Tom left after lunch to visit his parents, but not before making Sarah promise to call him if Marcus showed up. "He knows where I live," Sarah had said quietly, and Tom had assured her he'd already filed a report documenting the incident from the night before. "Just in case," he'd said. "Guys like Marcus don't like losing control. If he escalates, we need a paper trail." Marcus did try to show up, actually. At 6 p.m. on Christmas Day, Rachel's doorbell rang, and when Rachel checked the peephole, there he was. Marcus, holding flowers and wearing his most contrite expression. "Don't open it," Sarah said from the couch, her heart racing. Rachel didn't. Instead, she called through the door. "Sarah doesn't want to see you. Please leave, or I'll call the police." "I just want to talk to her." Marcus's muffled voice came through the door. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "No," Rachel said firmly. "She's asked you to leave. If you don't, I'm calling my brother and he'll arrest you for trespassing." There was a long pause. Then, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll do better. Tell her." "She can hear you just fine," Rachel interrupted. "And the answer is still no. Now leave." They heard footsteps retreating down the hall. Rachel looked through the peephole, watched him leave the building, then came back to the couch. "You okay?" Sarah was shaking, but she nodded. "I can't believe I almost opened that door.
Part of me wanted to.
Part of me wanted to believe he'd actually changed." "That's normal," Rachel said, sitting beside her. "He's been conditioning you for 5 years to respond to his manipulation. It's going to take time to break those patterns." Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "Sarah, please. I know I messed up. I know I pushed you too hard. I'm sorry. I love you. Just come home, and we can work this out. I promise I'll be better. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. It was everything she'd wanted to hear for 5 years. The apology, the acknowledgement that he'd done something wrong, the promise to change. She could go back. She could give him another chance. Maybe this time would be different. But then she thought about standing in that kitchen, in agony, being told she was dramatic. She thought about the years of slowly losing herself, of becoming smaller and quieter and more accommodating. She thought about the life stretching out ahead of her if she went back, an endless cycle of him pushing and her giving until there was nothing left of her to give.
"Sarah, no."
"I'm sorry, but no. I need you to respect my decision and give me space. Do not contact me again except through lawyers. I'll file the paperwork after the holidays." She blocked his number before he could respond, then blocked him on all social media. Then she blocked his entire family except Kyle and Amanda. Then she put down her phone and cried, great heaving sobs that made her incisions ache, but also felt like a release, like poison being drawn from a wound. "It hurts," she told Rachel. Even though I know it's the right thing, it hurts. Of course it does, Rachel said, holding her. You loved him. You built a life with him. You're allowed to grieve that, even when it was the right choice to leave. Sarah spent the rest of the week at Rachel's apartment, healing both physically and emotionally. She called a lawyer the day after Christmas, a woman named Patricia, who came highly recommended and had kind but firm eyes. I've handled cases like yours before, Patricia said during their first phone consultation. Marriages where there's no physical violence, but clear emotional abuse and control. It's actually more common than people think. The good news is you kept documents. You have witnesses. You have that police report from Christmas Eve. That all helps. What about the house? Sarah asked. It's in both our names, but his mother gave us most of the down payment. He's going to claim it's his. Doesn't matter who gave you the down payment, Patricia said. If both your names are on the deed and you've been making payments for 5 years, it's marital property. We'll deal with that. For now, I want you focused on staying safe and healing. Let me handle Marcus. It was such a relief having someone else deal with Marcus. Sarah hadn't realized how exhausting it was, constantly managing his moods, walking on eggshells, trying to predict what would set him off next. Now, someone else was running interference, and Sarah could just breathe. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings, doctor's appointments, and slow healing. Patricia moved quickly, filing for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences and immediately requesting temporary spousal support. Marcus, predictably, lost his mind. He showed up at Rachel's apartment twice more, once with his mother in tow. Diane had actually screamed through the door about Sarah being a homewrecker and destroying her son's life, which would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Rachel called Tom both times, and the second time, Tom issued Marcus a formal warning about harassment. Next time, I arrest you, Tom had said flatly. I don't care that it's your wife. She's asked you to leave her alone. Respect that, or face the consequences. Sarah also started therapy. Her therapist, Dr. Lisa Morrison, was a specialist in domestic abuse cases, though Sarah still struggled with applying that word to her own situation. He never hit me, Sarah said during their third session. Doesn't that mean it's not abuse? Physical violence is one form of abuse, Dr. Morrison said gently. But it's not the only form. What you've described to me, the isolation from friends and family, the constant criticism disguised as jokes, the financial control, the dismissal of your physical pain and medical needs, the way he'd gaslight you into thinking you were overreacting. All of that is abuse. It's called coercive control. Sarah sat with that for a long moment. I feel stupid. Like I should have seen it sooner. It's not about being stupid. Abusive relationships don't start that way. They start with love bombing, with the person seeming perfect and attentive. Then the control starts slowly, so slowly you don't notice it's happening until you're completely enmeshed. It's like a lobster in a pot of water. If you throw it in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, it doesn't realize it's being cooked until it's too late. That's exactly what it felt like, Sarah whispered. I kept thinking, when did this happen? When did I become this person who's afraid of her own husband? You're not that person anymore, Dr. Morrison said firmly. You got out. You saved yourself. That takes incredible strength. By mid-January, Sarah's incisions had finally healed, though she still felt twinges of pain when she moved wrong. Patricia had secured temporary spousal support, enough for Sarah to get her own small apartment and start rebuilding her life. Marcus fought it, of course, claiming she didn't need the money, that she was just being vindictive. Let him claim whatever he wants, Patricia said with a predatory smile. I have documentation of your entire financial situation. I know exactly how much you contributed to that household, both financially and otherwise. He's going to pay one way or another. The divorce proceedings were uglier than Sarah had anticipated. Marcus contested everything: the division of assets, the spousal support, even the timeline of their marriage, claiming they'd been separated in spirit for years and therefore she deserved nothing. He's doing this to punish you, Patricia explained after a particularly brutal mediation session where Marcus's lawyer had spent 2 hours painting Sarah as a gold digger who'd never contributed anything to the marriage. He's angry that you left, angry that you stood up to him, and he's trying to make this as painful as possible to break you down and make you come crawling back. It won't work, Sarah said, and she was surprised to find she meant it. Yes, the process was exhausting and sometimes demoralizing. Yes, there were moments when she wondered if it would be easier to just give up, take whatever he offered, and walk away. But then she'd remember standing in that kitchen on Christmas Eve, in agony, being told she was dramatic. She'd remember all the times she'd silenced herself, made herself smaller, swallowed her needs, and wants to keep the peace. Good, Patricia said. Because we're going to win this. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can spot a controlling narcissist from a mile away. Marcus is textbook, and judges see through that behavior eventually. What Sarah hadn't expected was the support that came from unexpected places. Kyle and Amanda reached out regularly, checking on her, offering to testify if needed about what they'd witnessed on Christmas Eve. Amanda actually met her for coffee one afternoon, looking nervous and guilty. I need to apologize, Amanda said. I've known for years that Marcus was controlling. Kyle and I used to talk about it, about how you'd changed since marrying him, how you didn't laugh as much, how you always seemed on edge around him. But we told ourselves it wasn't our business. We told ourselves it was just how relationships are sometimes. I'm so sorry we didn't say something sooner. It's not your fault, Sarah said, though part of her wished they had said something. Would she have listened? Or would she have defended Marcus, the way she'd done so many times before when friends tried to point out red flags? It is, though, Amanda insisted. We enabled him by staying silent. We let him think his behavior was acceptable because no one ever called him on it. Jennifer still won't admit he did anything wrong. She's completely on his side, posting on Facebook about how you abandoned him on Christmas, how you're a terrible wife. But Kyle and I are done. We told Marcus we won't be coming to any more family events if he's there. Diane, of course, lost her mind over that. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. You have no idea what that means to me. You were always too good for him, Amanda said. I hope you know that now. The real surprise came from Jennifer, of all people. 6 weeks after Christmas, Sarah received a message from her on Instagram, where apparently Jennifer had found her before Sarah could block her too. Jennifer, I need to talk to you.
Can we meet?
Sarah stared at the message for a long time, suspicion warring with curiosity. Jennifer had been firmly on Marcus's side, had been the one filming Sarah's breakdown on Christmas Eve and probably showing it to anyone who'd watch. What could she possibly want?
Sarah. Why?
Jennifer, because I owe you an apology. And because I saw something that made me realize Marcus isn't who I thought he was. Please. Just coffee. 1 hour. Sarah agreed, against her better judgment, but she insisted they meet in a public place, and she told Rachel exactly where she'd be. Jennifer was already there when Sarah arrived, looking uncharacteristically nervous, her usual polished veneer cracked. Thank you for coming, Jennifer said. I wasn't sure you would. I'm not sure why I did, Sarah admitted, sliding into the booth across from her. Jennifer took a deep breath. I was at Marcus's house last week. I still had a key from house sitting last year. I showed up to drop off some of Mom's old china she'd asked me to give him, and I heard him talking to someone on the phone. At first, I thought it was you, that maybe you two were reconciling. But then I realized he was talking to someone named Melissa. Sarah's stomach dropped. Who's Melissa? That's what I wanted to know. So I stayed and listened, which I know is wrong, but Sarah, he was telling her he loved her. He was making plans to go away with her for Valentine's Day. He was talking about how once the divorce was final, they could finally be together properly. The coffee shop seemed to tilt sideways. Sarah gripped the edge of the table. How long? I confronted him after he got off the phone, Jennifer continued, her voice shaking. He tried to lie at first, but I wouldn't let it go. He finally admitted he's been seeing her for 8 months. 8 months, Sarah. Since last April. April. Sarah remembered April. That was when Marcus had suddenly started working late all the time, when he'd gotten a new phone and started being secretive about his messages, when he'd accused Sarah of being suspicious and paranoid if she asked too many questions about where he'd been. He gaslit you, Jennifer said quietly. Just like he gaslit me and Kyle and Amanda about how you were the problem. He told us you were dramatic, that you made everything about yourself, that you couldn't handle his success. But he was cheating on you while making you feel crazy for suspecting it. And then he had the audacity to force you to cook Christmas dinner 4 days after surgery while he was planning a romantic getaway with his mistress. Sarah couldn't speak. She felt like she'd been punched in the stomach, all the air driven from her lungs. Part of her wanted to cry. Part of her wanted to laugh, hysterically. Mostly, she just felt vindicated in a sick, twisted way. She hadn't been crazy. She hadn't been dramatic or oversensitive or any of the things Marcus had made her believe. "I'm so sorry," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face now. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I filmed you on Christmas Eve. I'm sorry for everything I said about you on social media. You were telling the truth the whole time, and we all chose to believe him instead."
Why?
Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you believe him over me?" Jennifer wiped at her tears. "Because he's my brother. Because it was easier to believe he was the victim than to accept that he's capable of being cruel. Because admitting he was wrong meant admitting we'd all been enabling his behavior for years. It was easier to paint you as the villain." They sat in silence for a long moment. Sarah's mind was racing. 8 months. He'd been cheating on her for 8 months, treating her like garbage, forcing her to perform for his family, all while carrying on an affair. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. "Does your mother know?"
Sarah finally asked.
"I told her.
She doesn't believe me.
She thinks Melissa is just a friend that I misunderstood. Or she's choosing not to believe it because that would mean accepting that her perfect son isn't so perfect." "Of course," Sarah said bitterly. "I wanted you to know," Jennifer said. "For the divorce. I'll testify if you need me to. I'll tell the court what I heard. I know it doesn't make up for how I treated you, but—" "Thank you," Sarah interrupted. "Seriously, thank you. This helps. More than you know." She texted Patricia as soon as she left the coffee shop, her hands shaking so badly she could barely type. Patricia called her back immediately. "Are you kidding me?" Patricia's voice was sharp with fury. "He's been having an affair this whole time while painting you as the bad guy. Jennifer is willing to testify." She heard the phone call. She confronted him. Perfect. This changes everything. Community property states don't typically factor infidelity into asset division, but it absolutely factors into the judge's perception of character. Especially when combined with everything else, the medical neglect, the emotional abuse, the control. Marcus just handed us a gift. The next mediation session was 2 weeks later, and Sarah walked in with her head held high, Patricia by her side, and a recording of Jennifer's testimony safely in their possession. Marcus's lawyer started with his usual aggressive tactics, demanding Sarah accept a lowball settlement and threatening to drag the case out for years if she didn't. Patricia smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Before we continue," she said, sliding a folder across the table, "I'd like to enter some new evidence. Testimony from Jennifer Hayes regarding a phone conversation she overheard between Mr. Hayes and a woman named Melissa Richardson. In this conversation, Mr. Hayes declared his love for Ms. Richardson and made plans for a romantic getaway, all while still married to my client." Marcus's face went white. His lawyer grabbed the folder, scanning quickly, and Sarah watched the color drain from his face too. "This is," Marcus started. "Proof that you've been having an affair for at least 8 months, Patricia interrupted smoothly. 8 months during which you told your wife she was paranoid and dramatic for suspecting infidelity. 8 months during which you isolated her from friends and family, controlled her finances, and ultimately forced her to cook a Christmas dinner 4 days after surgery, while you were planning to leave her for your mistress. Does that about sum it up?" The mediation took a very different turn after that. Marcus's lawyer called for a recess, pulled Marcus into the hallway, and had what appeared to be a very heated conversation. When they came back, Marcus's demands had suddenly become much more reasonable. My client is prepared to offer an equitable split of all marital assets, his lawyer said stiffly. 50-50 division of the house proceeds, 50-50 division of retirement accounts, and continued spousal support for 2 years. 5 years, Patricia countered. My client gave up her career for this marriage. She needs time to retrain and re-enter the workforce. They eventually settled on 3 years, which Patricia told Sarah afterward was actually quite good. Judges typically award about a year of support for every 3 years of marriage. You were married 5 years, so we'd normally get maybe 2. 3 is excellent. The house sold quickly. It was a beautiful home in a good neighborhood, and Sarah felt a pang walking through it one last time to collect her remaining belongings. But it was only a pang, not the gut-wrenching grief she'd expected. This house had never really been hers. It had been Marcus's house, decorated to his taste, arranged for his convenience, a stage set for the performance of their marriage. Her new apartment was smaller, shabbier, in a part of town Marcus would have sneered at. Sarah loved it. She loved that she could paint the walls whatever color she wanted. She loved that she could leave dishes in the sink overnight without being lectured about responsibility. She loved that she could eat cereal for dinner while watching trashy reality TV in her pajamas if she wanted. Most of all, she loved the silence. No one to criticize or belittle or dismiss her. Just peace. Rachel helped her move in, along with Tom and a few other friends who'd slowly started trickling back into Sarah's life once they realized she was free. Friends she'd lost touch with during the marriage, people Marcus had labeled as bad influences or time wasters. They showed up with boxes and wine and laughter, and Sarah realized how much she'd missed this genuine connection, people who liked her for who she was, not who they needed her to be. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted that night, after everything was unpacked and they were sitting on Sarah's new couch surrounded by empty pizza boxes. To new beginnings, Sarah echoed. And to best friends who show up when you need them most. The divorce was finalized in March, a mere 3 months after Sarah had walked out on Christmas Eve. She'd expected to feel more when it was official, some big emotional release or moment of closure. Instead, she just felt tired, and relieved, and ready to move forward. She started taking classes at the local community college, working toward finishing the degree she'd abandoned when Marcus convinced her she didn't need it. She got a part-time job at a bookstore, nothing glamorous, but the owner was kind, and the work was peaceful, and no one cared if she moved slowly on days when her old surgical site ached. She even started dating, though tentatively. The first few times men showed even slight signs of Marcus's controlling behaviors, wanting to know where she was all the time, getting annoyed when she made plans without consulting them, making jokes at her expense, Sarah ended things immediately. She'd learned what she wouldn't tolerate anymore. A year after that disastrous Christmas Eve, Sarah found herself standing in Rachel's kitchen, helping prepare Christmas dinner. Not forced this time, but choosing to, moving at her own pace, laughing as Rachel told stories about her latest disastrous dates. "How are you feeling?" Rachel asked at one point, and Sarah knew she wasn't asking about physical pain. "Good," Sarah said, and realized she meant it. "Really good, actually. Better than I've been in years. I'm proud of you, you know. What you did, walking out like that, it was brave." It didn't feel brave at the time. It felt terrifying. "That's what bravery is," Rachel said. "Being terrified and doing the thing anyway." Sarah's phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but then saw it was from Kyle. She opened the message. "Kyle, thought you should know. Marcus and Melissa broke up. Apparently, once he couldn't blame all his problems on you, she realized what he was really like. He's been calling Mom constantly, crying about how he made the biggest mistake of his life losing you. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case he tries to contact you." Sarah showed the message to Rachel, who snorted. "Of course he did. Of course, once his new supply didn't work out, he wants to come crawling back." "Do you think he'll actually try?" Sarah asked. "Probably. Guys like Marcus always do. They can't stand losing control." Sarah thought about it for a moment, then typed back to Kyle. "Thank you for telling me. If he does reach out, I won't respond. I hope he gets help, but that's not my responsibility anymore. Marcus did try to reach out, actually. On Christmas Day, exactly 1 year after Sarah had walked out, he sent an email. Not to her personal email, she'd changed that, but to her work email, which he must have found through some online stalking. Sarah, it began. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been doing a lot of thinking this past year. I was wrong about so much. I was cruel to you, dismissive of your needs, and I let my ego get in the way of seeing what a good thing we had. I've been in therapy, working on myself, and I realize now how badly I treated you.
I'm sorry.
I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be happy. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't deserve that. I still love you, and if you ever wanted to talk, I'm here. Merry Christmas. Marcus. Sarah read it 3 times. A year ago, this email would have broken her. She would have cried, would have wondered if she'd made a mistake, would have been tempted to respond, to give him another chance. Now, she just felt nothing. Maybe a little pity. Maybe a little sadness for the time she'd wasted. But no urge to respond, no desire to reopen that door. She deleted the email and blocked his work address too. That evening, Sarah hosted her own small Christmas dinner. Just her, Rachel, Tom, Kyle, and Amanda, and a few other friends. It was chaotic and loud and imperfect. Someone dropped a dish. Someone else burned the rolls. They had to order pizza as backup because the turkey was undercooked. It was the best Christmas Sarah had ever had. Speech. Rachel called out at one point, raising her glass. Sarah, you have to make a speech. Sarah laughed, embarrassed, but stood up. Okay. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for supporting me through the worst year of my life, for helping me remember who I am underneath all the years of being told I was too much or not enough. Last Christmas, I was standing in my kitchen in agony, being told I was dramatic for being in pain. This Christmas, I'm standing in my own kitchen, she gestured around her small apartment, surrounded by people who actually care about me. So thank you for everything. To Sarah? Rachel cheered, and everyone echoed it. To Sarah? Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Sarah was alone in her apartment, she found herself thinking about that Christmas Eve a year ago. The pain, the fear, the moment she'd decided she'd had enough. It had felt like her life was ending then. In some ways it had been. The life she'd built with Marcus, the person she'd tried to be for him, the future she'd imagined, all of that had died that night. But something else had been born. Sarah had been born, or maybe reborn. The real her, the one who'd been buried under years of control and criticism and gaslighting. And she was still figuring out who that person was, still discovering her own likes and dislikes without Marcus's voice in her head telling her what to think. It was scary sometimes, this new freedom. The absence of someone controlling her every move meant she had to make her own decisions, take responsibility for her own life. Some days that felt overwhelming. But most days, it felt like flying. Sarah stood at her window, looking out at the city lights, and made herself a promise. She would never again make herself small for someone else's comfort. She would never again silence her own needs to keep the peace. She would never again accept being treated as less than she deserved. She'd serve Marcus and his family a Christmas they'd never forget, all right. Not with some elaborate revenge scheme or dramatic confrontation, but by doing something much simpler and much more powerful. She'd chosen herself. She'd walked away. She'd rebuilt. And in doing so, she'd given herself the greatest Christmas gift of all, her freedom. If you've been moved by Sarah's story of courage and transformation, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and hope. Drop a comment below sharing your own story or what this meant to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, it's never too late to choose yourself.